relevant agencies, I think, have to sit down to conduct a thorough investigation on the incident so that we can prevent at least the future occurrence of such. We came with about 10 sack of food items, including rice, 100 sack of food items, which include rice, maize, and millet, and the donation of 10 million naira for the 20 million naira.
In a swift reaction, the Nigerian Air Force says it will launch a thorough investigation into the raining of airstrikes on the two villages, which claimed the lives of about 10 civilians and left many others injured. Well, let's get more reaction to this. Former spokesman of the Nigerian Air Force, retired Air Vice Marshal Olatokunbo Adesanya, joins me on the news at 7 to discuss this development. Thank you so much for joining us at this time. This incident in Sokoto State, the Sokoto State governor has described it as a mistake. But, you know, the Chief of Defense Staff believes that the troops were right on their target. What do you make of these positions?
Thank you for having me on the program this evening. I would like to start by stating that the loss of lives at any point is always a sore point, and certainly when it has to do with the loss of innocent lives, then it becomes even more tragic. But that is without prejudice to the findings that have been promised with relations to this incident. At this point, I've heard about two conflicting things even in the course of this news. One is an allegation that it was a mistaken bombing, and another one is that investigation will be launched. So which means the first part might be premeditative, because you cannot conclude that it was a mistaken bombing of innocent civilians until a thorough investigation has been concluded. Be that as it may, I would also like to state that there has been recent, with all due respect, relative show of ignorance in using the terminology mistakenly bombed innocent civilians or mistakenly bombed civilians. There's a clear difference between accidental bombing or mistaken bombing, as well as, on the other side, collateral damage. Mistaken bombing will refer to a situation where the fighter aircraft went to a location that was not designated as a haven of terrorists or insurgents, whereas collateral damage would imply that some civilians died within the vicinity of a place that has been thoroughly identified as a haven for terrorists. And worldwide, and even according to the Rule 14 of the Geneva Convention, sad as it may sound, collateral damage is a globally recognized phenomenon. And the principle basically is that if at all there will be death to civilians, injury to civilians, or general damage, it should be minimal with respect to the military objective that has been achieved. I do not have the specifics now, but one thing that is clear is that the localities that have been attacked in this case were certainly haven for terrorists. And if that is the case, one thing that begs the question is, what were the civilians doing there? It's important to also note that issue of security certainly demands an all-of-government approach. Normally, we'll have what we call courses of action. Apart from the kinetic aspect, we'll even have the political aspect, we have the media and information aspect. And so I expect that there should be a closer conversation between the political leadership over those communities and the military before a statement of any sort will be put out. Let me rest a bit.
And as it is, the Chief of Defense Staff has actually said that an investigation would be launched into this incident. But then, is this investigation enough, or would you suggest an independent investigation to really unravel the cause of this development?
Well, the question is, the military, as I know it, has never shied away from any form of investigation. And after all, we are not under a military democracy. So even the Nigerian military works under a civilian administration. And I believe the military remains subject to the leadership of our civilian authorities. But I know clearly that we have a leadership in the military that has integrity as its core value. And if indeed there has been a case of mistaken bombing, I have no doubt that it will be stated out clearly. But one thing that we must not lose sight of is that in this same place, it has been confirmed that there were quite a number of terrorists there, and that since this incident, that of course the desired military objective has also been achieved. And I know from previous practice that before such a strike is undertaken, there's a lot of credible intelligence out there, which of course I'm not at liberty to disclose, but they include electronic sources, human sources, and the rest. And so when these sources are, this intelligence is received from these sources, one thing that is always done is to then confirm those sources, and that is done with the aid of the Air Force aircraft that are designated specifically for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And many might not be aware of how these aircraft operate, but they have powerful cameras that actually pinpoint things. And so, clearly in this case, as I've been told, that these ISR operations were also carried out. And it was after these ISR operations confirmed that these were indeed haven for criminals that the airstrikes were launched. And one thing that we must also consider is that this same place is a place where we had other settlements there who had been forced to flee the area. And so if the former settlements had been forced to flee the area, who then are the civilians that have been injured as a possible result of collateral damage? I believe that the civilian authorities also have a responsibility, which is part of the courses of action in this campaign against insurgency and banditry, to always educate the civilian personnel, the civilians that are in those communities, to shy away from places where you have bandits. And it's not possible. The military forces are not magicians. And so it's important that when we have civilians who have seen the activities of bandits, they should report them.
All right.
And they should try to keep their distance from them.
Yes, I was going there actually because, you have spoken about the need for intelligence and all that. And then how do we really improve civil-military relations in order to boost intelligence gathering and discourage members of the public against harboring criminal elements? Because this is one position that the Chief of Defense Staff has hammered on today in the wake of the incident.
Well, I believe the current leadership, even up to the level of the Minister of Defense, is doing a lot in this regard, judging by the things that I read in the newspapers and online. I'm aware that at the start of the reinvigorated campaigns in the Northwest against banditry, that the Minister of Defense, as well as the Chief of Defense Staff, paid a lot of visits to governors in all the areas to be secured. Of course, many of us will not be privy to the discussions, but some of the statements released after such visits indicated that they were working together strongly. And I saw an indication of this when a few days ago, the Katsina State government released a commendation letter for the same group of officers that are responsible for today's attack. And that was in Katsina on the 19th of December, following series of airstrikes that also led to the decimation of the capacity of the terrorists. And the same process that led to that airstrike was the same process followed, I believe, in this case. So that showed, for example, that there's a close collaboration between the civilian and the military authorities. I want to believe the same thing should be existing everywhere. It should be a model. But when I saw that, I said this should be a model, because when you have the civilian and the military authorities working together, the only losers at the end of the day are the non-state actors that are bent on causing a lot of havoc to the ordinary peace-loving Nigerians.
All right. All right, then. Wait to see how the investigations pan out, to see the outcome at the very end. Retired Air Vice Marshal Olatokunbo Adesonya, former spokesman, Nigerian Air Force, thank you so much for talking to us on TVC News at 7.
The pleasure is mine.